Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this month's Third Thursday for Therapists. As you all know, my name is Dr. Nkesa Ball, and I've been moderating these events for quite a bit of time now. So I wanted to go ahead and just share, for those who are new with us, a little bit about TogetherWell's platform and what they have been doing. So founded in 2019, TogetherWell is a nonprofit organization that focuses on addressing the emotional and mental health needs of individuals and families. Their online platform, TogetherWell.org, links communities in need with mental health care providers in their area, and also focuses on providing professional, affordable educational workshops. So they have been so gracious enough to organize events on a monthly basis for our clinicians out in the field doing the hard work. And that is where the Third Thursday for Therapists comes from. It is a mouthful to say. So definitely, we are so happy to have you and really, really excited to talk about this month's topic. We're going to be focusing on the power of support and in the power of support and advocacy in peer mental health. It is past 5 o'clock, so I'm going to give myself permission to make lots of mistakes because it's the evening time, and I encourage everyone else to make mistakes too. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panel of awesome presenters and share with you a little bit about their background. So up first, I'm going to be starting with myself. For those who don't know, I am a clinician, a clinical psychologist, and the founder of Being, a psychological corporation. We had a name change, and I've been working with children and families for very, very long time. And we are, doing wonderful work in the community and are really, really happy to be here to support TogetherWell through our Third Thursdays. I am also going to pivot over to Dr. Chris Celio, who is the Vice President of Clinical Operations at the Hume Center. And he started working in mental health back in 2001 and originally trained to be a child psychologist. When he arrived at the Hume Center in 2007 and found that he was going to shift his work to working with adults diagnosed with serious mental illness. He brought with him an emphasis on family and other systems that the consumer is a part of and a creative spirit through the process of mental health and really treatment. He believes that healing and recovery can come through many surprising and outside of the box pathways, beliefs, and persons, which is very, very important to think about. And forgive me, Chris, I believe I said your name correctly. If I did not, please definitely correct me. So we have Chris joining us, who has been doing a lot of wonderful work with Contra Costa and just the work that he's been doing as the community partnership with Putnam Clubhouse. In 2018, you received the Hope Award for that. And it also looks like you've been committed as a clinician. You received the Committed Clinician Award through NAMI in Contra Costa back in 2019. So we are really, really jazzed to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope I did not completely butcher your introduction.
You did fantastic.
Next, we are going to be joined by Jennifer Tulipolotu. And that's like my first name, so welcome. Thank you for joining us. Jennifer brings over a lifetime of lived experience and professional experience to her work. She is a former foster youth of 11 years and has successfully navigated the child welfare system, alcohol and drug services, probation system, health services, and mental health system for herself and her family. She and her partner share a son, 4 stepsons, and 5 grandchildren. Really, 5. You have a lot of energy, which is awesome. Jennifer is currently with the Contra Costa County Behavioral Health Services Administration and works as the Office for Consumer Empowerment Program Coordinator. Prior to her current position, Jennifer worked as the Family Services Coordinator position, and she has, I think I misspoke that, Jennifer worked as the Family Services Coordinator for Child and Adolescent Mental Health. Previously, Jennifer did work at CCBH Administration, Office for Consumer Empowerment, working on projects to reduce stigma and increase education, which included the REACH program, the Borough, and the Photo Voice project. Before joining OCE, Jennifer also worked for CCBHS Older Adult Program as a peer provider, and also with the Children's Mental Health as a family partner in the juvenile justice and mental health system. Her career as a peer started in the child welfare system in Contra Costa with Children and Family Services and their Parent Partner Program in 2005. And she's also the recipient of the 2001 Contra Costa County Recovery Happens Award and is a 2009 Contra Costa College Spirit graduate. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We also will be joined by Amelia Wood, who is working as a peer specialist and joined in 2017. From 2017 to through 2020, she demonstrated understanding and the needs of her clients. She became a case manager too, and a housing specialist for Hume simultaneously in February 2020. She is instrumental in developing Hume's housing village and as well as developing innovative methods to house clients and keep them housed. She has developed a consumer council and worked with the community partners in creating ways to curtail homelessness. She is a vital member of the Northern Waterfront Project, which is elevating community voices in relation to the redevelopment happening across the cities of Contra Costa, ensuring that the redevelopment is inclusive of the local community and educating people in the involvement, also advocating for them to have a voice in their community as well. In addition to that, she's an active member of the Behavioral Health Consolidated Planning and Advisory Work Group, CPAW, as well as a member of Contra Costa County Behavioral Healthcare Partnership Program. Thank you so much, Amelia. And last but not least, we are joined by Marissa O'Neill, who is the program manager at Putnam Clubhouse, which is currently located in Concord, California. The Putnam Clubhouse is a nonprofit organization that helps people with mental health challenges rebuild their life. There, they specialize in social and vocational rehabilitation, and they use a model that is evidence-based, which is focused on the unique fact that recovery is achieved through work and relationships. Marissa graduated from the Spirit program and received her Peer Specialist Support Certificate in 2017. There she learned that the Spirit program while hospitalized and had the opportunity, she learned the Spirit program while hospitalized and had the opportunity to become a peer support specialist at that time. And she will talk a lot about this experience, but stated that that experience changed her life. She loves giving a helping hand to those in need and instilling hope and inspiration to others. For her future, she plans to go back to school and to get a teaching credential and teach first grade. And she's proud to be a dog mom. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I am thrilled to hear about your experiences and talk with you about peer mental health support and advocacy. And first, I want to just start with saying, how are you all doing? It took us a second to get started, but I'm hoping everyone is doing well.
Yes.
And it's awesome. Amelia, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. That also gives us a quick way to do a mic check and make sure that everyone's wonderful voices. So without further ado, we're just going to pop right in and ask some questions. And I'm hoping we can start with Chris and Jennifer for this first question. I'm wondering, how would you define the peer mental health movement? How does peer specialist support therapy and case management? What is that? How do you describe it? And if for those who don't know, how would you share that information?
Once upon a time, mental health was defined by people who had MDs after their name. And eventually there were therapists and eventually there were case managers. But these were people often who came from other experiences and didn't have that lived experience. Well, now you have in treatment teams all across the world, you have people who might not have doctor in front of their name or MD in front of their name or MA, but they have LE after their name, as a good friend puts it. They have the power of lived experience, and they bring that as a guide to the table, bring hope and wellness and a sense of having been there and lived through it. When you're in the middle of that suffering, it can feel like you're in quicksand, but it can actually be more solid ground when you see that there's someone on the outside of it who's been there, and they can kind of give you a helping hand and pull yourself up. And it used to be peers were thought of as adjunct, or maybe just for outreach, we'll send them out to be kind of cute. But now they're a full part of the team. They might get prescribed as part of the team, and maybe they're the number one service that's going to bring that healing. And maybe the therapist is on the sidelines or being seen at the same time. A lot of things happening right now are including peers as an equal part of the team.
And Jen, what would you like to add?
So what I like to say about the peer mental health space is that I think that for us, it's a unique environment where I believe that because of our lived experiences, there's a certain spirit about each of us that stays connected with each other. So in the peer movement, I feel like we're transparent, that we're supportive of each other, that we're very resourceful because we've navigated most of the resources that are available, that we are very compassionate and empathetic. And, the other piece that I like is that as a community, us peers are in it for the long term. And, once a peer, pretty much all a peer, you learn all of your peer skills. And that anyone who moves on to do anything different in their life, that they're not forgotten, that they'll always be remembered and part of, the peer movement. So I think it's very unique. In terms of case management and therapy, I want to start off by saying that peer support wasn't originally designed, to do the clinical work. However, we have found that having a peer involved has been very, very helpful. I mean, for one, is because, we are people that have, managed our wellness. We're living in recovery. We're people that are healing, and being able to connect, with others that are looking, to work on their wellness helps them to be able to move forward and maybe not be so stuck when they know that other people are also working for their best interest. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And so I'm wondering, when and how did you get into peer mental health services, and how was your background instrumental in supporting you in becoming a peer specialist? And for this question, I'm wondering if we can start with Amelia and then transition to Marissa.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes. So I'm just wondering when and how you got into doing the work that you do, and just how your particular experience and background has supported you in becoming a peer specialist.
So I originally took Spirit for myself. I wasn't really looking for a position. After taking Spirit, I have two children that are currently utilizing the mental health field. So I wanted to learn more to better support my children. And we had this amazing presenter come in one day that did a presentation on boundaries. And I strongly believe in
very strong boundaries. So it caught my attention. I really paid attention to what he had to say that day, especially when he was talking about his organization. So I didn't hesitate in jotting the Hume Center down as one of my site visits that I wanted to visit and learn more about. And that's where it happened. I was at my site visit talking with Chris, asking a few questions. I asked him what was the availability for jobs at the Hume Center. And he said there wasn't that much turnover. And so we all walked out of the room with our heads, down. And I was like, Chris, what about someone that's bilingual? He was like, I take that back. You're hired today. And so that's what started my journey here at the Hume Center. And I love it. I love supporting my peers. And I don't think there's a lot of support out there for adults with severe mental illness, housing wise. Which really, really scares me for my kids because they're growing up utilizing mental health services. And so I want to create this system to support adults with severe mental illness and housing because they can do it. And they are people and they deserve their own house.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Mm-hmm. And how about for you?
Yeah, so I first got involved in De Pere mental health services in 2017. Growing up, it always fulfilled my heart to help others. I began experiencing my own personal mental health challenges, which required multiple hospitalizations, therapists, and medications. My final hospitalization was in 2017, and I will never forget a woman named Vicky, who was a community support worker, and she educated me about Spirit program in the hospital. She really opened my eyes to possibility and the opportunity to become a peer support specialist. So as soon as I got out of the hospital, I filled out the application for Spirit. And after my first class, I instantly felt inspired and uplifted. And the thought of being able to help others because of my own journey in recovery and wellness kept me alive. I knew it was my purpose to inspire others as Vicky did for me with the Spirit program. So after completing Spirit, I was able to use the instructors as references. And one of the instructors told me about an organization that was hiring called Clubhouse. So this was my first job interview in a long time, but fortunately, the Spirit program really prepared me. Together, we worked on our resumes, cover letters, we did multiple mock interviews, and it really gave me the confidence to go into my first interview in a long time. And I really had the feeling of like, I got this. I've now been at Putnam Clubhouse for 4 years. I recently got promoted to program manager, so that's exciting. At Putnam, I get to work side by side with others in their journey to wellness and being able to share where I've been at my darkest places and show others where I am today is an honor. My story has helped others to see the light like Vicky's story did for me. And I've been able to sign up many people for Spirit and have encouraged many to go back to school and work. And my journey really allows me to understand what others are going through so I can truly connect with people and build that trusting, meaningful relationship that one really needs.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I think that, it's really important to hear everyone's experiences and how they got into the work that they do, because there is there isn't a real clear understanding of how successful people can be, that a challenge is a challenge for one part of their life, right? So it doesn't have to be the whole experience for the person. And so your stories really do help to support people in understanding that change is inevitable and growth is inevitable. It just takes time. And I'm curious about how you guys came to that place of helping people to understand patience and understand continuing to try. So I imagine that took some training. So in your setting, what does that training look like? And in your various roles, I'm just wondering about what the responsibilities look like in your position. Like, what are you finding yourself doing? How are you supporting people? And for this question, I'd like for us to start with Amelia again, if we can.
I feel like a majority of the things that I do is providing, that lived experience and holding hope for my clients and remembering if I was in that position, would I want someone to give up on me? And just really, meeting them where they're at. And just, I love community. I've been really involved with my communities. So I'm a firm believer that the community that's given to me, I'd love to give back to that community. So I've done so many community events and just been really involved. I honestly used to take my kids down to Loaves and Fishes, and we would just sit there and talk to people, and they just loved my kids, so it's my passion. I love it. And I think everybody should be treated equally. So that's why I'm here. I want to be that voice that they may not have.
Thank you. And Jen, how about for you? Could you share a little bit with us about, the training that you went through, as well as the roles and responsibilities that you might find yourself engaging in currently?
Sure. So the training that I originally went through was a short 1-week training. And that's what allowed me to be able to begin working at Children and Family Services as a peer partner or a family partner. And then I left from that position because I was interested in working in mental health. That felt closer to my heart, was, mental health and children's mental health. And came across a syllabus. It was a document. And I looked at all the trainings listed and thought, oh my gosh, I've been missing out. Look at all these great trainings. And I said, how do I take Spirit? And it's a course that's taught at Contra Costa Community College. So the person I was working for at the time said, you know what, you might be eligible to take that course because you have lived experience. So I often say that I came into the county system, backwards, because most people get into the county system as peer support providers after they take Spirit. Well, I was already working in the system, and then I took Spirit, and I was so happy that I took it because the greatest thing that I learned from Spirit was self-care. So, which was something that I wasn't taught while I was working as a peer partner, family partner at Children and Family Services. That was the one piece that was missing, and I've since gone back and talked, to the person that first hired me there too. We're great friends, and so. Moving forward today, what I do, interestingly, is I oversee the Spirit course. It's a 9-unit course. We contract with Contra Costa Community College. I have 2 staff that are peer instructors, one with a family member experience of being a parent or caregiver of children, navigating the system, also of adults navigating the system, because children do grow up and some of them, still remain and still get the services and supports. And then the other one is an adult peer that's also in substance use recovery. And then I also have 2 additional peer vocational specialists who support the students. And we've had up to 49 students graduate from the class. So we range anywhere between 30 to 49. We stay mostly on the 45 to 49 students each year that graduates. Very rare if it's less. And So it's a 6-month class. You graduate with a certificate. It's intense, and Amelia and Marissa can tell you all about it because they've already mentioned Spirit.
Okay, I'm just going to see, can we just shift to Marissa and you can tell us a little bit about your experience in the training? And then Amelia, if there's anything you want to chime in on, feel free.
Yeah, so Spirit is amazing. I highly suggest it. So you get the opportunity kind of to share your story, and you do learn a lot of self-care. And like I said, you learn, how to do a resume, and you do those mock interviews. And every organization and agency, every day is different. So you have different presenters each class. Like Amelia was saying, Chris came from Hume and presented. And then you have the opportunity to do 2 site visits, and you go and explore organizations that you're interested in. And then you do interviews with different organizations. It's kind of like speed interviews, and you pick an agency to do an internship with. So I actually had the ability to intern at Pittsburgh Adult Mental Health, which was awesome. I did a pilot position. It was a waiting room liaison. So people would come in, and I would kind of assess their needs right as they came in and try to give them some resources right off the bat. And then I started at Putnam Clubhouse shortly after I graduated Spirit, a few weeks after. And then at Putnam, it's great because everyone holds equal responsibility. So everyone's peers there, members and staffs, they all contribute to training, and anyone who is new to the organization. So when you go into Putnam, you're actually trained by, as others would call them clients, but we call them members. And it's really empowering to give that back to the community who oftentimes gets their choices taken from them. So now I'm currently the program manager at Putnam Clubhouse. So a lot of my responsibilities include making sure all the programs are running smoothly, enforcing those policies and procedures, and engaging staff and members in the working units. But it's a great thing about a peer support run program is that anyone and everyone at the clubhouse has shared responsibility.
Nice. And was there anything you wanted to add, Amelia?
Well, there's Spirit, but there's also like rap trainings, because I'm a rap facilitator. I'm a photo voice facilitator. I know that Spirit also holds the alumni trainings. So it that keeps us, like refreshed on some of the things that we went over in Spirit, although I still have my binder intact. I love the alumni trainings. It's where you can continue networking and stay refreshed on everything that you were trained on in Spirit as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. It sounds like you've each had an amazing experience going through the Spirit program. And I'm just, thinking about Jen's comment about working in the county and wanting to focus on working with children and families and kind of making that pivot. And you've been doing a lot of work and trying to bring peer support into the mental health system. And I'm wondering, how did you really get that started? And since you've been doing that, what is that looking like for you now?
Is that question for me?
Yes, sorry.
Oh, so are you asking how peer support started in our county and throughout our system, or?
Well, yes, I meant in particular for you. It sounds like you've been doing a lot of advocacy in terms of bringing peer support into the county and into the system where you're working. And I'm wondering how you got that started, and just like from where you started to now, what is that looking like?
So I have to give a lot of credit to people that were here before me in my role. My office was started about 27 years ago by a well-known advocate, Jay Mahler, who just recently passed. And he was definitely a pioneer in this work, alongside Sally Zinman, which is another well-known mental health advocate throughout the state. And it was the two of them that really grounded this work. And from the foundation that they've built, the people the few other folks that came before me have continued to, build out the peer program. So for example, 14 years ago, when I was hired as a peer worker myself, there were probably about 30 peer providers working throughout our system. And since then, we now have 64 because, we advocate. We have 64 plus peer providers that are fully benefited by the county. And we have additional peer providers such as, over at Putnam and, with Hume and other CBOs. And so that's been built out through lots of advocacy and, showing how peer support works throughout our system, and that it's an evidence-based practice. And that we do provide the hope and hold the hope. And we also walk alongside people, we look to not, have the power structure, and we develop trust, and people stay connected with us a lot longer. So it shows throughout the system. And to keep it sustained, there's continuous ways that we advocate for that. And one way is by integrating peers with lived experience into the structure and the infrastructure of the mental health system itself. So for example, I'm able to have a voice at the table all the way up at the executive level, where I meet with the chiefs and with the behavioral health director and the medical director. And then we have peers that are, members throughout our whole county on different committees, decision-making committees, we have some influence, and we have a large voice, and we have, a strong community, and we support each other, and we lift each other up. And so we're present and we're visible. And we do really live behind the nothing about us without us motto. And if you know what that means, the best way I describe that is if somebody comes into my home and starts designing my home without my input, I'm not going to feel good about that. It's not going to be my home. And I probably wouldn't want to live here anymore because that's somebody else's design. So if when people are making decisions about our care, and about our treatment, we want to have input too, because we're the ones that have to buy into it, and we're not going to buy into something that doesn't work for us. So, that's what I found while working with different ethnicities and cultures, that, talk therapy and medication is always not maybe their first choice. There are many other choices out there, and community-defined practices that we want to hold and lift up so that more people can become involved, and we can therefore reduce stigma in the community and get more people access to services.
Thank you so much for that, because I do think what it reminds me of, and we often hear this about children, that it takes a village, but in reality, just treatment does take a village, and caring for one another is historically part of many cultures. Everyone pitches in and does different things. I can only imagine that there are many complications with working with clinicians, even like myself, in terms of how to use and how to utilize the services of peer support. And so that leads me to my next question. I'm kind of curious about what in particular has the peer mental health movement looked like for each of you? What have been some of the hardships? What have been some of the strengths? And for this question, we'll start with Chris. And tell us about, for you, what your experience has been.
Sure, thanks. In 2014, we added our first peer specialist at the Hume Center, and we didn't quite know what it would be like, but we were excited to kind of go outside of the box. And I remember hearing peer specialists around the county in different positions talking about how, the team doesn't know how to use me. They just say, hey, tell your story, and then I'll get back to my therapy. And it really good that, one story can be helpful, but actually sometimes it's not the right way to go in terms of treatment and boundaries. Maybe it's not the story. It's coming from that experience. It's being with the person, not judging the person, holding the hope. And so there was a lot of new learning we and others in throughout the county had to do as with this expanded. And it wasn't hard because each case became easier as soon as we got partnered up with the peer specialist on it. I remember very specifically a case of 2 years of a person who I thought was abusing or using some substances, but couldn't get him to admit it, couldn't get him to talk about it. And it was impacting housing. And he was always on the threat to get kicked out. He was homeless for a time. And finally, we brought on a peer specialist who just looked at him and said, "Hey, I see you. I know you. I've been you. You're using. So now what? So let's move on to the next step here." And he's like, "Yeah, you're right." And it just started to come out. And I kind of took a little bit backseat. She brought him through those first steps of what he needed to go through, which was the hardest part. And I kind of stayed with it a bit, and then I kind of came back in when the moment was right, and really learned how to use peer specialists as a different part of the treatment, sometimes at the same time, sometimes at the beginning, sometimes at the end. And of course, we really love it when we get to refer folks to places like Putnam, Clubhouse. I always say at Hume Center, we're going to reduce the suffering and kind of get them ready. But if we really want to help folks launch back into the lives that they want to live, they've got to go to a place like that. And this is where peers really bring the hope. And so it's a good partnership there.
Awesome. Thank you. And Marissa, how about for you? What do you feel have been some of the hardships and the strengths?
Yeah, well, hardships. So in the beginning of my recovery, I was in a county that didn't really offer a number of resources or opportunities to turn my life around as Contra Costa County. So I wasn't receiving the help I really needed, and moving to Contra Costa County was very helpful to me, and it turned my life around because Contra Costa actually offers resources and they have facilities to help access those resources. So that was definitely some hardships living in a different county and then not really having what Contra Costa County has. Contra Costa County really does have a lot of amazing resources. And then the strengths, the peer mental health movement has instilled in me a sense of belonging, a community, a family. It empowered me to move past personal obstacles in my life and to see myself as a valuable member of a growing community.
Awesome. I'm just curious in terms of being able to utilize that community and being welcomed in. Did you feel that came easily, or was that something, and also Chris, for you as well, did you feel like there was any opposition or challenges at that step?
No, not at all. I feel like all peers are so welcoming and they make you instantly feel comfortable. And I think that's kind of just a trait you need to do to be good as a peer support specialist. And everyone who I met that were peer support in the peer support service and in the mental health field already had that in them, and they just made me feel at home right away.
Thank you. And Jen, how about for you? Did you feel like in your work in terms of the peer mental health movement that you experienced any hardships, or even highlight some of the strengths that you've experienced as well?
Sure. So some of the hardships that I think some of peer providers go through are people maybe, or other designations, providers not understanding the role clearly. And, and there's been times where maybe at a table, a peer may be heard and seen, however, their input may not be valued or respected. And, that's been a challenge. And, on the other hand, I would say that there actually are quite a few providers, who are curious and really want to understand the role, and will ask questions to get clarification, and really can see how to utilize peer providers as they're designed to be. There are times also that there's a term called co-opted, that peers can be, exposed to being co-opted, being that we've used this term, they can turn into mini clinicians and not realize it. And I actually can say that because that was me when I worked in my CSW role as a peer in the older adult mental health. I just wanted to case manage, and actually I'm trying to use the word care manage because we're not cases, right? We're people. So I often felt weird when I say case, but I was using case here. So I'm trying to change my language and use care. So I became like the mini care manager, and I didn't realize that I was falling out of my role as peer. I actually was moving out of my lane, and sometimes sometimes it's accepted and it's okay, and until I reconnected with my other peers and said, hey, this is what I'm doing over here in this role. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute, that I was like, oh, okay, especially if you're newer, into a position. But, some of the strengths that we have are that we have supervisor training for peers. We have presentations for, any provider to learn about what do peers do in our system. And the other, I think, good thing is that with the training, for supervisor training, there have been times where supervisors have started to try to fix a person if they're having symptoms, and or try to analyze the situation, and then then it's no longer the employee supervisor role. And so I always encourage not to do that, to hold them accountable as an employee to their job description, so that they can maintain that boundary, and that the supervisor maintains that boundary, that there are accommodations that exist. There's FMLA that people can take for self and for family, and to utilize those. That's part of the job, And on my side, and I had to learn that, all of these years working as a peer, because, in the beginning, I thought it was all about, I'm going to share everything with you because my whole life has been an open book. And moving forward now, working in the system, I think you should know everything about me. And I found that it shouldn't work that way, that I'm a professional in my role. And so I spend time, with the spirit students, talking to them about that when they go out into a professional role. That you're no longer that open book. You don't have to be that open book anymore. So, I think that those have been some, strengths, and that's progress that we've made, in our system. And, a lot of what I teach or, coach or talk to others about is from my own mistakes that I made through the many years of working in peer support.
Well, they say the mental health world is a practice, right? No one ever gets it perfect. You're constantly learning. Mm-hmm. And I think what you kind of bring up are some of the points that Amelia brought up that brought her in, which was boundaries, talking about really good boundaries. Mm-hmm. So very important in our work. And I'm glad that you're speaking to it. And I'm just kind of curious in terms of, peer mental support and peer mental health support, and just kind of looking at the movement currently. I'm wondering if we can speak to what it's looking like in the BIPOC or BIPOC communities currently, in terms of benefits and hardships, and just, are there any particular moments that you could describe as a peer specialist where you were able to reach a client using, the services that you provide? And Chris, we're going to start with you on this one.
Yeah, this brings me back to a study from several decades ago, and it was in a neighboring county, and they said, well, those Japanese clients, they only like to talk to each other. They don't come in for services. So a researcher says, I'm going to research this, and I'm going to save this community, and I'm going to bring them out from their family. And so he looked into it, and he found out that there were 0 providers in Alameda who spoke Japanese. So of course they're talking to each other There was nobody like them to talk to, and literally they couldn't talk to the people in the study, couldn't talk to the providers. And so what we have with peer mental health, which really is to elevate a diversity of voices, a diversity of cultures, and bring them into the treatment team table as equals. That was really important when Hume got into peer mental health in 2014. We had kind of looked around and people were looking down at them saying, well, you're just going to do outreach and then we'll kind of do all the real work. Well, we found that people hadn't really been training their peer specialists on clinical boundaries to be a clinician from a peer mental health standpoint, to understand that that relationship. And so we brought them into the same level as the rest of us, and really started to get a greater diversity around the table. And that's important, because people of different cultures than yourself, you might look at their behavior and say, oh, that's a mental health disorder, let me help you and save you. And really you're just looking at difference that you don't understand. So the more you bring onto the team. Also, people want to talk to people that look like them, that have the same experience or similar experiences. Mental health now is becoming more diverse, but we come from a history of old white dudes, and we're in the middle of that transition. I'm excited about the future, but we're definitely not there. A lot of us aren't caring about the stats that show higher rates of going to the hospital in certain groups than other groups. People still have to yell about that. People still have to bring attention to that. And so we're definitely not there. And so we need to elevate as many voices onto this as possible. And peer mental health brings in that lived experience from those areas, and it'll hopefully bring in the healing. Whereas before, someone would go to the doctor's office and say, you don't get me, and then go home and they'd be called a problem. Well, now they're going to go and see someone hopefully that looks like them. Could be the therapist, could be the psychiatrist, but the more we have peer mental health right on the ground on the engagement side and the treatment side, I think it's going to bring a lot of healing in where there was blame.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that perspective. And I'm wondering, Amelia, if you don't mind sharing a little bit of your perspective as well. What are your thoughts?
I would like to pass this question.
I know it's a big question, and I feel free to pass anytime. Marissa, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I think Chris said it really well, so I'll leave it at Chris.
All right, awesome. And so just looking at, how different communities and how we can support the voices in those communities by having peer mental health, supporters working with them. I really appreciate, Chris, you sharing the importance of that advocacy and raising that voice. And also just highlighting the research, how it's such a factor. A lot of our data has constantly always been done on generally affluent white males or just affluent white females. We're starting to definitely see changes in terms of the research, but if we're practicing on a population, we should have data that supports that population. And your peer mental health support has essentially giving the community firsthand data that we don't have in a research article yet. But, it sounds like it's not just important, it's vital work that you guys are doing. So definitely very appreciative. Just wanting to ask a couple more questions, and I also want to see if I can incorporate a question from one of our viewers as well. So the next question that I wanted to just ask a little bit about is, where do you see the future of peer mental health, this movement? Where do you see it going? And this is a question that's open to everyone. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are and kind of what your hopes are.
I'd love to start because I am so happy about SB 803 being passed. The governor signed that bill, and that's a peer certification bill. We had been working on that for many, many years, and it was it was vetoed and not signed, about 3 times. And then this last year it was signed, and it was just amazing. What that means is that throughout the state of California, we will have peers that where their skills look more alike. We'll have a set of standards. There will also be an oversight board similar to like the BBS, the Board of Behavioral Services, right? So that if there's any complaints or grievances, there would be a process for that we would abide and sign and follow our own code of ethics that have been approved by the Department of Healthcare Services. And that there's going to be some additional billing codes. If any folks do Medi-Cal billing, there's now going to be added peer support billing codes for adults, for parents and caregivers of children working as family partners, for family members who also work as peers to other adult family members, and also for substance use services too. And we're really excited about this. This really shows that we are our own type of provider, and that our skill set is very specific and different than other providers and designations. And also with the ability to bill underneath these, or bill for Medi-Cal, get reimbursed. It's looking like the reimbursement rates may be up next to one of the higher categories, which means that the reimbursement rate that comes back could pay for our positions and then some, more. So it's looking pretty promising. And there's one key to this. Counties have to opt in right now. It is a pilot. And I know that, our Contra Costa County is opting in, and that there are other counties that are opting in, because we've been waiting for this for so long throughout the state of California, and we've been working on this project. So we hoped to develop an additional classification. That means that there might be there will be more of a career ladder. So I'm really excited for the peers and family members in our systems that work as providers.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm glad to hear that, you've provided some history on all the work that you've been doing to get this as a certification. And just from everyone else, I'm wondering, what are your hopes and what are your thoughts about the direction of, the peer mental health movement?
I hope that as this movement grows, it puts us all out of a job. And I don't mean that in one way. What I mean is, folks who have been there and lived it, they can bypass so much of the wasted time. There was a stat in California, folks of a certain culture, they go from first symptom to first treatment, 11 years, because the system doesn't look like them and doesn't talk to them. And it's not part of their culture. Well, imagine if you had peer specialists from that culture who could navigate. And even if you are from whatever culture in this county, this system's hard. I mean, we've been taught to kind of go in one direction, and mental illness can kind of knock you off to the side. And you're saying, how do I go? Where do I go? All the work we've done as providers in Contra Costa has taught me, the services are there. We just don't know how to talk to each other, and people don't know how to access them, right? So if you have folks lived experience who've gone from point A to Z, who can then navigate someone through, it's a lot less wasted suffering and wasted time. And if you can then use peers to zoom folks into that next level of recovery through places like Putnam Clubhouse, where they're kind of held through that last mile of the journey, right? But they're held to all the miles, but there's that mile that Putnam, they'll just shoot you up, right? They'll get you into work, into life, into being supported, etc. In whatever way you see that. And I think that's what's coming with pure mental health. It's just like what Jen said and what everyone else has said. I think it'll be prescribed. It's its own treatment. I think another place that peers are really going to do a great job on is all of the online therapeutic resources. I don't think you need a licensed person sitting in chat rooms and, moderating. I think that could be somebody with lived experience. And so those things are popping up, and that's a lot of opportunity for healing right there.
Any thoughts? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's okay. I'd love to see the peer movement go kind of on the youth side as well. I think that maybe not a peer specialist, but like some kind of mentor program for our youth. Because I mean, if I can sit here today and think back to my youth, and if I had a peer specialist, where I could have been or where I could have gone. Sorry, Chris, I might not be, but yeah, I'd love to see it go towards youth a little bit too.
Awesome, thank you. Any thoughts, Marissa?
Yeah, I just feel like we have been gaining momentum. We've come so far in such a short amount of time, and we're only growing even more. The opportunity to get a job as a peer support specialist in Contra Costa County is amazing. I just believe with that more time and advocacy, peer mental health will be seen as an asset to all those in recovery. And the peer support community is seeing more prevention and early intervention. And as a result, programs are flourishing, such as Platinum Clubhouse and Heal and OC. So I can't wait to just watch it keep going, keep growing and growing.
And, you know, we are a little bit over time because we started just a tad bit late, but I wanted to wrap us up with one more question that was actually asked by one of our viewers. Eric asked, I can get back to it. Well, Eric asked about, you know, he said about his experience and how he has felt like being a peer mental health support has changed his mental health. And just curious if you feel comfortable enough to share doing the work. His impression is, how has it improved or supported your own mental health?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because it highlights the fact that we're all humans. We have different titles, and so today is about peer mental health. And it kind of separates, is there this magic line between a therapist and a peer mental health specialist? And for me, it's just folks with different levels of suffering, but we've all kind of got the same brain in the same way that we deal with things. For me, I've understood my life and my hardships in a whole different manner after becoming a provider, and the honor of sitting with consumers and hearing their story and watching them move through it. And then the hope is, as some of them find those ladders to move back out of that suffering, and then seeing folks get stuck in the suffering and trying to find out what's there. I've gone through my own suffering, and doing this work, you really get a good reflection of yourself, and you are saying things and you're like, oh, maybe I'm talking to myself there, you know? And so it's really a privilege to do this, and it's something that grounds us all in our humanity.
Any last thoughts from anyone to chime in on?
I just know for me, as far as keeping up with my mental health, it's honestly being a peer support provider. It's a constant reminder for myself, you know, especially when I took Spirit, I learned my rap training there and everything, but going over it with my clients again, it kind of, you know, helps me keep myself in check. You know, so if we're doing a rap group and I noticed, hey, maybe these are some of my triggers going on, or I'm not feeling normal because this was my response last week and this week it's different, you know, it keeps me on my toes, honestly. So it's not only benefiting my client, but it's benefiting myself as well.
I've healed. I've been on a continuous healing journey. Like Amelia said, I've paid attention to stressors or triggers, and you know, while doing this work, and when it comes up, I address it. I've gone deeper. I've taken a step forward instead of taking steps back. And I'm very direct now. And I used to be a walking ball of grief. That's what I felt each day. And it was just like a few days ago where I woke up and realized, wow, it's been a while that I haven't felt that way. And I just really became fully aware of it, you know, just recently, that a lot of that has been let go and I'm not carrying it any longer. And that's because I knew I needed to do more work through the years, and I'll continue to do more work moving forward.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This has been such an awesome discussion, and we've learned so much about peer mental health support and peer mental health providers and the direction that we're hoping and we'll see happen over, you know, the next few years as we get more of you doing this work and collaborating with clinicians and medical doctors and just really being in the room and being present. So I just want to thank you each and every one of you for doing the work. So valuable.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So with that, I want to thank you all for being with us, and I will wrap us up. Thank you so much to our viewership for joining us this evening and being part of the discussion. And as always, TogetherWell is a wonderful platform. If you want to stick around and engage in the networking afterwards, please do. If you have questions about TogetherWell or are interested in putting together a workshop, definitely go on over to the website, which is togetherwell.org. and take a look. You can get registered and learn so much about TogetherWell and how they support clinicians and being able to do their own workshops and get access just to support, to network, and really keep involved in educating themselves and educating each other. And with that, I guess we are all done. So hopefully you had a wonderful time and learned more about peer mental health. And if you are a clinician and interested in learning more, definitely check them out through your county. And if your county does not have them, maybe you could be an advocate to support having peer mental health providers in your county. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful evening and hope to see you for our next third Thursday. Definitely check out the website to learn more about our next event and the future events that will be coming up. Take care, everyone.